Welcome to Divorce Not Murder, the podcast where we hopefully make divorce more appealing than homicide. I'm your host, Kristina Ivy, mental health therapist, mom of two, and new addition to the ranks of the recently divorced. We've also got Robert Taylor here, Idaho-based divorce attorney and step-parent extraordinaire.
Hey, Kristina.
Hello.
How's your week going?
Slow and steady. You know, it's Thursday. We're one step closer to that beautiful Friday and then the weekend. So
I'm
can't complain.
looking forward to the weekend. Any weekend plans?
I have, a laundry list of tasks that maybe we should do an episode on this actually, but the if you've got 50-50 or split parenting time, that week that you do not have your kids is definitely heavy on the tasks that have been on the back burner. So I've got taxes and I've got other errands and appointments and yeah.
I
It's
remember
full.
those days when we
Yeah.
had kids in the house every other week. It was awesome. Now we have a kid in the house every week, and it's also awesome in a different way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be nice if she also left the house with her siblings for a period of time, but I'm happy that she
a
lives
play
here.
date.
Yeah, for a weekend. I'm always like, how come when their dad comes and picks up the older two, I'm always like, how come I have to take care of your kid for every other week forever, but you can't take my kid for a 3-day weekend? Like,
Yeah.
that seems fair to Robert. Like, I need some Robert time.
Are your
But
kids allowed to go for sleepovers?
they are. So our
Well, your
oldest,
youngest will eventually reach a point where there will be sleepovers, and what you got to do is you got to time that when the other two are already gone to see their dad.
well, by the time that the youngest is doing sleepovers, the older two would be out of the house.
All
But
right.
anyways, what are we going to talk about tonight, Kristina?
Well, we spend a lot of time talking about law, and that makes sense. You are an attorney. There's a
It is a
lot
law
of
firm podcast.
this is a law firm podcast. But what about me? No.
What about you, Kristina?
No, I was reading an article this week that was interesting to me, and I am interested in how it impacts the work that you do as well. But it was on the phenomena of quiet quitting marriages. And when I say quiet quitting marriages, I'm also not specifically just talking about women. Like this can be men quiet quitting their marriage as well. But predominantly, this is women who have uh, presented to their partner things that they want changed or they want improved or they want to see different in their marriage, things that they maybe have gone to counseling with their partner on, hoping that it would produce a lasting change. And maybe that didn't happen. And so as a woman becomes more and more frustrated that the change is not coming about, they just kind of give up bringing the concern to the table at all, which can look like to the other partner, oh, just isn't an issue to this person anymore. And it's the exact opposite. It's such a big issue and such a failure to ameliorate this issue that they've given up. And it sort of starts this slippery slope of quiet quitting, which is, you don't make this big to do. You don't make you don't give your partner an ultimatum, fix this or I'm leaving. It's just you start making in your own mind your exit plan, like weighing your benefits and debts and the pros and cons, all of that, and kind
Sure
of
to stay
deciding
or
how to move
sure to
forward.
go.
Exactly.
I mean, would you describe quiet quitting as like checking out or giving up or somewhere both in the
Yeah.
middle,
So
something else?
quiet quitting, as it's described, I think, in popular culture and the workforce, is just really not putting in that same amount of effort and investment and kind of caring whether or not that relationship lasts. And at the same time, it's this path, right? So it starts
Yeah.
with that. I quit, I start to pull back, I start to shut down. And then as you move along that path, you also start to set yourself up for an alternative. So when people have quiet quit their jobs, then they're looking into brushing up on their resumes and looking at other jobs to apply to and things like that, while still clocking in and getting enough of a paycheck that they're still present in the day to day.
Yeah, I kind of thought as quiet quitting as like, hey, I don't want to work here anymore. I'm just going to do less and less until somebody else notices and then asks me to leave. Maybe that's 6 months from now, as opposed to giving 2 weeks notice now. Um, and I see that like the employer is the one that ends that relationship. But I mean, in the
Mhm.
marriage, I mean, is it just hanging out till the other party is like, hey, this isn't for me anymore, or you've changed, or at some point it's just part of the beginning of the end for that exit strategy to for the person who has decided to quiet quit, or maybe haven't decided but find themselves in doing it, whether they know it or not. Like, is that part of their exit strategy to get out, or is it still like, well, I'll just wait till my spouse decides to divorce me?
I think it could be either, any, both, right? We don't exist in a vacuum, so anything we do in a situation is still going to impact the other people in the situation and the other parties involved. So it may mean like that person senses the withdrawal, they start to see problems on their end. Maybe it leads to what is sometimes colloquially called a dead bedroom. So, when intimacy has exited the relationship, often that can be a reason for men to pursue divorce, whereas women will tend to tolerate a dead bedroom for significantly longer periods of time. Um, so yeah, I think in some ways it's that woman still just putting in just enough in the day to day to get by, while starting to kind of come up with the exit strategy, or emotionally come to terms with the failure of the relationship and the next steps. Or it might mean that in doing that, it flags the other person as well, and they start to really see that something is dysfunctional and a problem, and maybe they pursue divorce.
I do want to come back to the emotional aspect, but do you got some examples from either experience or the article about quiet quitting?
Yeah,
Or like
I well,
what type of things somebody may or may not do or stop doing?
yeah, I think one of the areas where we see quiet quitting as probably something that makes a lot of sense is in a volatile relationship, a volatile marriage. So, one where emotional abuse, domestic violence, things like that are present. A woman is going to be very reluctant to do anything that might trigger additional violence, retribution, anything like that. So, she may start to undertake the steps of extricating herself from that marriage as safely as possible, squirreling away money, talking to contacts that she believes are safe and will, hold confidentiality, before actually sort of pulling the trigger. I hate to use that language in a domestic violence example, but before moving forward with actually notifying that person with papers or whatever the case may be.
I think I've read that females specifically can spend up to 2 years thinking about the course to get divorced. I mean, is that kind of when we're seeing the cycle of quiet quitting in that 2 year window?
Yeah, I think as people are in and out of that pre-contemplative and then contemplative stage of change, if you're familiar with some of those, it's that ambivalence. I mean, I would imagine you would see that play out in your law office. Like you might get a query from a woman who is wanting to know some basic details of a divorce process, and then you answer those questions and you don't hear from them, and then 9 months later they're coming to you and saying, I'm ready.
Yeah, that happens pretty often. And I think though sometimes people have those conversations and it starts to get real, and either they like, yep, okay, this is the plan, or re-engage, or have that hard conversation with their partner. And sometimes I'll give people some advice, do the phone call. I thought it was a good conversation. It's like, hey, let's proceed. And then I don't hear from them for like a year, and then they follow up and say, hey, well, we were doing those things that you had mentioned. or they were putting those things in motion. Sometimes people call and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting divorced. What do I need to be considered, or what are my, how is that going to look?" And they're very much in the fact finding stage.
Hmm. Well, it seems like you're aware of some of these patterns because you've been doing this for such a long time. So I wonder if you can speak to why you asked. So for our listeners, when I was considering divorce, I reached out to you. I asked you some questions about the process and things like that. And one of your first questions to me was, "Is this going to surprise him?" Which I think speaks to this, right? Like a person knowing or having a sense of this coming can have legal implications.
Yeah, I think I always look through, like, I think there's three timelines of divorce we'll go through. And we've talked about it before briefly, but there's like the procedure timeline, how long it takes for things to go through the court system to get filed, signed, that type stuff. There's the practical piece where, like, hey, if we're going to sell the house and then we need that money so we can both move, right? We're just going to stay married to the house sells or whatever the case is. But the third is the emotional access. um, and I think, in a situation where one partner is prepared to exit the relationship, they got a head start on that emotional one. And then the partner could be unaware that there were problems, or maybe thought there were partners or problems, but hey, we're going to get through them, and could be caught off guard on that request. The and sometimes that the safety aspect could be that if one person's totally off guard, or I don't know. One time I had a friend similar to your situation, reach out to me, and we were able to help with her divorce, and we had talked, like I just mentioned, like, hey, she gave me a call like a year, had some questions, and then it was like another year and had some more questions, and then it was like, okay, I think I'm going to do it, and I was like, okay, uh, but then it was like, is this going to catch him off guard? And she's like, I don't know. We haven't had sex in 2 years. We hardly ever talk. All these things, and it was like, well, that seems like you're at the end of your relationship, whether or not there's a public acknowledgement of it. That person might respond differently than someone who thinks the relationship is going awesome. And maybe the relationship is going awesome for that person. Or maybe from a practical standpoint, it's clear that we've been talking about this for 6, 7, 8 months, and now we're going to do it, and we're on the same page, or we've talked about it, and I feel very strongly about X, and he feels very strongly about Y. It just kind of helps me understand what the situation is, that gives context to what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think in reading more about this and learning more about this, because I don't think it's an uncommon phenomena, is having some compassion now for my ex in this process, right? Like when a person stops bringing their concerns to the table to be talked about and addressed, and then that other person's perspective might be everything is fine, or it's good enough. And then when you do emotionally decide, I'm going to move forward and I'm going to pursue divorce, then that other person is forced to play fast track emotional catch up, like you're talking about,
Yeah.
and really go through a lot of emotional processing at a very fast rate. And so it helps, I think, me to just have more compassion for that.
Yeah, and I think I've been thinking about this lately. I mean, it wasn't a complete surprise. This was tonight's topic. We've been chewing on it for a few days, but I think, like, I've just been running through my own head, and thinking about my own relationship with my wife, who, I'd very much like to stay married. And just over the years, I think we've had conversations where, um, it's like, hey, I don't like that you're doing this, or hey, you're reacting this way to a situation that really wasn't the way that you reacted when we were, first together, or I've noticed you keep doing this. If that's, that's a problem, or it has the potential to be a problem. And in my head, and maybe because I don't want to say I'm always thinking divorce. I'm always thinking about divorce. I kind of just like I take that in as like, okay, this is like one of those moments where she's trying to tell me, like this is a problem, and either I take some actions to address it or to adjust the behavior, or 3 years from now, hey, let's get divorced, and I'm going to look back and be like, hey, she told me, that she didn't like if I did Y, or that I wasn't handling X situation well, and now she's telling me she wants to get divorced because of X and Y, and it's just like I feel like I don't want to say fortunate, but it's just like, well, I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and that getting the opportunity to respond, uh, versus just surprise. But it just makes me wonder though, like when people are like, I had no idea we were going to get divorced, and it's just like, did you really, or did you like just kind of bypass it? I think I know you don't listen to country anymore, but Kelsey Ballerini, I can't ever say her name, has a song about this exact topic where it was like,
Mm.
were you really blindsided, or were you really just blind? You know, um,
Mhm.
and I don't know. People are like, I had no idea, and it's just like you would have to know, like at some point. And I got like relationships are different, and some people are toxic from the beginning, and some relationships are crazy. But for most people, those happy times and things are great for some period of that relationship. But then it's like, well, clearly you had to acknowledge, you had to know that the end of the relationship wasn't that way. Absent like, someone having an affair or some other intervention, right? Or just
Mhm.
talking, running the relationship running its course, I guess. So I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't know. It is like I don't surprise. I don't know. Like it's like, are you really? And I get it. Like people do have to catch up, like you were saying, emotionally before they can process the reality and the
And to
practical
make
and the legal side of it.
rational and sort of reasonable
Yeah,
decisions about some huge topics.
yeah. Uh, but I'm always
That's
just like,
hard
how
to
did
do when
you?
your emotions are involved.
Yeah. So, but I'm just like, how did you not know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then like on the other end of the spectrum, of the other end of the extreme, like my least favorite clients or calls or cases are like, I think they call them civil divorces, but like old people, but senior citizens getting divorced. Hey, I'm 65. I haven't been happy for 30 years. Hey, I haven't been happy for a decade. We haven't got along since the 90s. Like I hear that
Mm.
stuff, and it just makes me so sad, because it's like you're spending all this life with a person that you either don't want to spend it with, or who doesn't appreciate you, where you could be
Mhm.
spending it with someone that loves you and wants to be with you. Like whenever I get that call, I always tell my wife, like, if you want to divorce me, like, don't wait 20 years. Like, just let me know so I can spend the next 20 years with someone that wants to be with me. Plus I'm hotter now at 40 than I'm going to be at 60. Like let me get my
You
good
got better
days. So
odds. Yeah.
I'm at the end of my
Yeah.
prime. Like I need to be out there if it's not going to work. But like, all jokes aside, like I just can't think of anything worse than like being in
Yeah.
a relationship that you don't want to be in for decades. And then at the same time, the other person wasting that time with thinking that they were in a, maybe I don't want to say healthy relationship, but a functionable or relationship.
Fine. The relationship was fine.
Yeah. I don't know. It was working for me. What do you mean? And like that's,
Yeah.
I mentioned it a couple of months or minutes ago, where it is like, uh, maybe that person does think the relationship is fine, and they do think, hey, like I
Mhm.
come home from work and there's food on the table and the house is clean, and I don't have to change a single diaper. Like this is the best relationship I've ever had.
Yeah.
One person could very much feel that way, and the
Mhm.
other partner in that relationship could have a different opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gentleman that I'm seeing, we were also talking about something that's kind of adjacent to this topic, which is, there's that people always say marriage is work. Marriage is hard work. And I don't disagree with that. Relationships are hard work, marriages are hard work, but there's a difference in how you conceptualize that work. Like there's a very big difference between corporate drudgery and the work that you put in like a passion project. right? And one feels very much like a drain on all of your resources and a drain on your existence, and one actually fills you up. It's work that energizes you. It's work that, sir.
I didn't say anything.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right.
But yeah, just I think that's what when you talk about people saying they might not know or they might feel like things are fine, it's because that work isn't draining them.
Yeah.
But for somebody else in that
Mhm.
relationship, it is draining them. And they're looking
Yeah.
for something that energizes them.
Yeah. I don't know. I got it. Marriage is hard work, but I always think like the hard part is being somebody that somebody else wants to be married to. Like that's where I think the work
That's
is
very mature.
improving my improving myself to want to be someone that my wife still wants to be with on a continual basis.
I
Being with
was
her is
going to
easy.
Yeah, I was going to say marriage is hard work because life is hard work. But
Yeah,
the person you're married to should make going through life easier.
yeah, yeah. I've thought a lot about that. Like life is hard. Um, you don't want to make it harder with your spouse or your teammate that isn't on your
Mhm.
team. Like I feel like my wife and I have dealt with some serious stuff in our life since we've been married. But it's been like outside stuff, family members, friends, jobs, stuff
You
like
and her
that. And
against the problem.
yeah, but like that stuff's hard and it's emotional and it sucks. Life is hard, but I feel like it would be harder if I had to fight my wife every single day. If we had to have the same conversations, disagreements, didn't see eye to eye on kids, and it's I don't know.
Mhm.
Like sometimes, like I always see relationships at the end, but I'm just like, you get to choose who you marry. Like you know that, right? Like this was a choice. Like you did not have to enter this relationship with this individual. Like, and sometimes it's like neither of them are bad people. It's just they're not good
Yeah.
together. And I'm just like, I don't. Let's get you divorced, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I do think about that sometimes. Like life is hard. Like it would be harder if your spouse wasn't on the same team as you. But
Yeah,
then, but then it
absolutely.
is a challenge. The life is hard to still put yourself in a position to be somebody else's teammate. Like that's a challenge.
Hmm.
I don't know. You want to talk about any quiet quitting examples you have?
Um, I think just kind of what I already spoke to a
Yeah.
little bit, which was I did see that play out in my marriage. I wasn't aware of it at the time that that's what I was doing. It wasn't a conscious thing. But I definitely stopped making the request that certain needs be met that were not getting met because it just wasn't happening. And I knew it was hard for that person. I knew it was something that didn't come naturally to that person. So part of that again is just like on me for for entering into a relationship with somebody who we were very different in that way from the beginning. Um, but then I think as people grow, they decide what they can live with and what they can't live with. And they recognize that, eventually children do leave the home and then it's back to you and this other person. And if you have some base level compatibility issues, um, it's that that's going to be it for, like you said, geriatric divorce when you're 65 and you're like, this was a problem all along. And when does somebody decide now is the right time to take action on that?
Yeah. How long do you think your quiet period or quitting period lasted looking back? Like when did that clock start for you?
It's really hard to put my finger on that, I think. Um,
That's
but it was
probably
a
good.
while. I think one of the big underlying issues, it's not linear. It certainly ebbed and flowed, and we did things like other people do to try and fix problems in relationships. We went to therapy. We, you know, tried different things to remediate the problems, but it I think in the last maybe 5 to 7 years is really when, you know, yeah.
That's a long time, Christina.
Eh,
I was thinking two
well,
years. I don't know. I mean,
it
I got it.
there I again, like
Kids and
there's not one particular
no,
issue. It's kind of when multiple things come to a head that you realize you've
yeah,
reached a maximum, right? And then you also maybe you realize too that there's hope for something different. And like you said, you would rather be 40 years old trying to find out whether or not that could work with somebody else than you
yeah.
would at 60.
Well, I think you kind of bring up a different point. Like maybe not easier, but like in the situation where there is a clear showstopper, rule breaker. I walked in and caught someone having an affair, or uh,
Yeah.
you added $60,000 of credit card debt this week that I didn't know about, or
You're
sometimes
using
it's
drugs and
yeah. I was
you've
gonna say
gotten,
DUIs
yeah.
happen a lot. This is your fourth DUI. Um, maybe I don't want to say that makes it easier, but that's definitely um, different than a little bit at a time. Like that seems like one big thing at one time, and everybody's like, "Yep, got it," versus a
Yeah.
small thing at a time. Um, though
That
sometimes
is a really interesting point.
I've been seeing kind of the opposite sometimes though. Now that I've said that, like, hey, my husband moved out. He's living with his girlfriend, and I don't want us to get divorced. What can we do? And it's just like, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't. I People have different deal breakers. I guess I don't know, but
Yeah.
it does. We mentioned that emotional timeline. It does seem like it could be a major event that gets you there right away. Yep, this is a deal breaker. I have to process. Like, let's do this. Versus like a little bit of time where there's no straw that breaks the camel's back. It's just
Hmm.
a little bit. So I could
Or
see why. Go ahead.
it has ramifications too, I think, in parenting, right? Like when there's one big thing that happens, usually there's a narrative like this person was at fault for something and this other
Yeah,
person couldn't handle it, versus when it's like a compatibility thing over time. You definitely I mean, I think that's a huge reason the co-parenting relationship that I have with my ex is the way that it is because neither of us is interested in villainizing the other person. He is an amazing dad, he is an amazing person. He's not my person and I'm not his. And it can add its own level of challenge and hard when you don't have that quick, easy, like this person did X
yeah.
and that's why we got divorced.
It's easy to maybe not hate, but easy to blame somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you
It's a little
stay married.
trickier when there's no blame.
Yeah. Does there have to be blame? I guess I don't.
Mm. Now we're
I
getting
don't know.
all existential and philosophical.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I deal with a lot of people, and sometimes it's like this person's really cool, and that person's really cool, and uh,
Mhm.
maybe they're just not meant to be together. It doesn't make them bad people. I think there's just you get a divorce, you're a failure, and it's just like, well, no, you just not with the right person, and you're gonna get divorced and go find the right person. The friend that I referenced earlier, we talk occasionally, and she's like super happy now. Her partner had checked out of the relationship. Just kind of hung out in the garage by himself for a long time and wasn't very
Mm.
active and involved. And uh, the kids go over to his house and they come back and like, we had the best weekend ever. And we did all these things. And he's dating somebody else and like is happy. And she's dating somebody else and she's happy. And it's like, I mean, I don't really get to talk to a lot of clients once things end. So I never know. But it's like, well, it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be a sad story or the ending. Like, I think in some ways you got divorced or married really young where it's like a new beginning. And I don't think we like view that in our society as I don't think anyone says my divorce is like a success, but like it doesn't have to be a failure. Like
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really great way to frame it, actually. I think
yeah,
you should quote that and put it on merchandise.
I will. Well, I mean, I guess it's like once you've realized that maybe you've made a bad, not a, let's not say a mistake, maybe not the best decision.
Mhm.
Or, people change. So what was a good decision 4 years ago isn't a good decision now.
Yeah.
Like, how long do you stick with it? Like how long do you ride that out or hope it gets better or try to make it better? I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own answer. Yeah.
It's tricky
Well,
business.
that seemed like a pretty informative article.
It was fun to talk about. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks for sharing and thanks for
Y-
reading. I don't,
Yeah.
uh,
Thanks for
I
answering all those questions early on for me.
happy to do it. I was just hanging out in a tent in Africa. And you know what they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And here you are almost, I don't know what it's now, 9 months later, hosting a podcast with me.
Talking about divorce on a podcast.
Yes. And you
All
thought that
right.
was free advice.
Ah, it's come full circle.
Yes. Yes. All righty. Well, next week, do we have any topics for next week?
Yeah. Well, this has me wondering about something non-legal related for you, maybe that you can speak to.
Yes.
I wonder if, as a divorce attorney, what steps do you take, or what tactics do you take to protect your marriage from the what you do every day, right? Like you see a lot of relationship negativity.
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of things. One,
Do but
uh,
but but is it a separate podcast, sir?
oh, I got you. I was going to answer. You asked me a question and answer it. Yeah, I'll chew on that. I'll chew on
Yeah.
that, and I don't know. It's like marriage advice from a divorce attorney. Like, I'll chew on that because I always feel like I don't really have the answers. I'm just figuring out as I go, and I don't know if this is successful or not. Right? Like, I won't know until
But
the end of my
you don't
life.
but if a lot of learning happens from where you see other people going wrong and you don't have to reinvent the wheel in your own life and go through those situations to protect against it, like you just said, from this quiet quitting episode, you're going to be thinking more about when your wife brings you a concern about something that is an
Yeah,
argument that's been happening over time. How you respond to it could be very important.
yeah. I'll chew on that. We can come back to that topic. I like that idea.
All right.
All right. See you next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christina. Bye.
Divorce, Not Murder is sponsored by Taylor Law Amp Mediation PLLC. Idaho divorce clients can find Robert at www.taylorlm.com.